IDPs from last year's floods were yet to settle down. Massive flooding last year killed over 2,000 people and left 11 million homeless in one of Pakistan's worst natural disasters.
Such a bad situation. Let's cross over to Karachi, where our correspondent Ahmed Jung is on standby to apprise us with the latest on these floods. Ahmed, hello, assalamu alaikum, how are you?
I'm good, Huma. How are you?
I'm good. Ahmed, we are seeing some terrible images of the floods and hearing some really bad stories. Now, fortunately, unfortunately, whatever you want to call it, we are not there. Please tell us what's going on. And first of all, let's start with Karachi itself. The rains have stopped. What is the situation like over there?
Well, at the outskirts of Karachi, areas like Reedy Goat and other small goats that have been formed in Karachi, those areas are still affected. Now the people are trying to get the water out of their streets and their houses, but still we haven't seen any role that have been played by the district management governments as far as helping the people who have been affected by the heavy showers of rain in Karachi. Now, Huma, you spoke about terrible stories being seen about the flood victims. So those victims who are saying that they are getting food once a day, and there is one meal being served in their camps. So these are the people who we'll consider as the most fortunate people as far as the flood is concerned. Over 58 lakh people have been affected, but only 4 lakh people have been present in the relief camps. Only 2,600 relief camps have been formed. Rest 54 lakh people are still on the roads or maybe stuck in the flood affected areas, still looking for help, but there is no one to help them.
Ahmed, now it is indeed a very sad situation, considering something very similar happened just last year, only a year back. A lot of quarters are saying that, you know, had the government done better with the embankments and the rebuilding of some of the dams, that could have stopped, things could have been much better. Are these the same people who were affected last year as well, who are affected now?
Well, most of them are the same people who were affected last year, especially the areas of Badin, Mirpur Khas, because this is the area from where the water has to move in Sindh and go and drain out towards the sea. Now the sea stopped taking water, and that's the reason we saw that water started to, we saw the water gathering in the area of Badin and then flooding nearly 31,000 villages in Sindh. 608 UCs were flooded with rainwater, and what we have seen now, since the water is being slowly drained out, Badin will be the worst affected areas, as the water that is present in the whole of Sindh right now will have to drain out from Badin area, which means that Badin will be was the first area that was flooded and will be the last area to be free from the water, as the water has to pass through Badin and then towards the Arabian Sea.
Okay, you have took some really, you know, large figures of people displaced and villages. You were saying something like thousands of villages as well. If you could, you know, pinpoint the houses that have been destroyed, the schools that, if you have a number, please give it to us.
Well, these numbers that I'm giving you, Huma, these are the official numbers of the disaster management. Now, disaster management themselves have told us that 31,000 villages have been affected. Over 12 lakh houses have been destroyed. Initially, there weren't any schools present in the interior zones, but certain schools that are present, which are in few hundreds, today are the relief camps. 2,600 relief camps have only been established, and 4 lakh, slightly over 4 lakh people have been accommodated in those relief camps. Now, 252 people right now officially have lost their lives due to these floods. Over 600 have been injured. But the most disturbing situation, Huma, is that over 16 lakh pregnant women are lying on the streets, and they are waiting for certain help as far as medical help is concerned. so that their deliveries could be made, and that not only their health is being affected right now, but their babies and their infants are being affected due to the lack of coordination and the lack of help that they have received so far.
Truly an alarming scenario there, Ahmed, from what you are telling us. Now, what about, you know, if we could concentrate a little bit on the harvested land or the land that is harvestable. Now, we understand that it is underwater at the moment. It might take weeks or even months for that water to maybe slide by. What is being done? Now, obviously, people cannot harvest there. Any specific news you have on how that land could be retrieved and, you know, people could actually go on with lives? Or is it too soon?
Well, Huma, that's a very important point, and last year also, since we have a massive flood experience from last year, there should have been certain mistakes that could have been improved in this year's floods, so we could have saved many human lives as well as these lands. 20 lakh acres of harvestable land have been destroyed in the area of Sindh. Over 90% of the crops that were about to be yielded or that were planted recently have totally been destroyed. Villages inundated. Now these lands are earning over billions and billions of revenue. Now what we know, Huma, that the government currently have no policy to somehow treat these lands, because we see that this water has been standing for now over a month now, and that once this water will start moving out, there will be salinity. It will take a lot of time for these people who were planting and who were farming on these lands to come back. But before these people come back, the government needs to be there to somehow treat this land before this land turns into a barren land, and billions of revenue that we were earning will be lost. And especially, Huma, in a state where Pakistan has no industry, and the industry is trying because of electrical and no energy that Pakistan has. This agriculture sector is about to die if the government does not act seriously right now.
And if I may add to that, Emma, if the same thing, which is floods year after year, if it keeps happening, then obviously we are going to lose this land anyway, because it happened, as you say, these are the same areas, these are the same localities that were flooded last year as well and this year as well, and God knows what happens next year too. Very quickly, Ahmed, if you could tell us, you know, people are watching us, so many people are still, you know, getting to grips with terms with that this year also, because floods did not affect Punjab as much as Sindh this year, so people are still learning of what's going on. If there are still people who want to help, what is the best way to help? What should they be sending? Medicines, food, tents, what all?
Well, right now the most dire need is for the food and the first aid kits. If anyone could give food to these flood victims as far as tinned foods are concerned, because they cannot avail fresh foods. If they can supply tinned foods, dry ration, water, milk, dry milk and biscuits to these flood victims, this would be the greatest help. They don't need clothing right now because they don't have any place to store these things, but they need food right now. First aid kits and certain medicines is the need. If anyone can supply them with diarrhea and fevers, vaccines, then that will be something that these people would actually be very thankful about. So that's the need of the day for them. And if some families can spare a slighter higher amount, somewhere around 10 to 15,000 rupees as as a donation for a single family, then maybe they will be able to rehabilitate at least one family by building up their houses, because it won't cost them anything more than 15 to 20,000. Something they have, but some they want. So if people can, that's the best way that they can help, and the best way will be to come to these lands, or either to send someone with a lot of goods directly. Don't give it to some NGO. You should come in and help your brothers, because after all, these are also Pakistani people who are waiting help from the Pakistani brothers.
Thank you very much, Ahmed, for apprising us of what exactly on the ground situation is in Sindh. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to implore everybody who is watching us, and you know, Ramadan was last month, it was Ramadan. A lot of people gave zakat as well, and there was a flood calamity going on at that time as well. But still, if people are willing to give, haven't given so far, this is the time to do it. Again, Ahmed was saying you should try to come directly if you want to help the people, and in any case, if you cannot go directly, there are so many organizations that are so trustworthy that you can go through them. I mean, the reason that you cannot go to Sindh yourself if you are not in Sindh is not reason not to help. You can still help. The things that are required primarily are food items, and of course medication as well, clothes of course as well. And if you can give your services, if you are a doctor for instance, do gather together with like-minded other doctors, other people, and go actually on the ground and help these people. In the coming few days, starting next week, we are going to be giving you a list of things that is actually required over there, packages as well that you could send as well, and also the names of some organizations that you could send these relief goods with if you cannot of course make it yourself. We are going to take a very short break. Please take this all in and spread the word amongst your friends as well. We are taking a very short break. When we come back, we have a couple of more stories for you. Hello, welcome back. Are we back? Okay. Let me give you a couple of stories, important stories that you should know before you wrap up for the weekend. Now, it seems like the unlikely place of Libya has become the latest spot for high-profile photo ops. British Prime Minister David Cameron and French President Nicolas Sarkozy are in the country, the most senior Western leaders to visit since Colonel Muammar Gaddafi was ousted. Now, Britain and France have been spearheading the ongoing NATO campaign over Libya, so it's apt that they should be the first ones to be there. Now, during their visit, the two leaders met National Transitional Council leaders in Tripoli and flew to Benghazi to speak to the former rebel strongholds Liberty Square, at the Liberty Square. And at this occasion, NTC Chief Mustafa Abdul Jalil thanked them for taking brave positions during the uprising. And just to put things into perspective here, Abdul Jalil had appealed for weapons to help take the few areas of Libya still loyal to Colonel Gaddafi, who, as the rumors say, is plotting his revenge. Yeah. Okay, now looks like Israel is feeling threatened as a number of countries have started to show their support for the Palestinian cause. Israeli Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman has warned there would be harsh and grave consequences if the Palestinians persist with their plan to seek UN membership as a state. However, speaking shortly before a meeting with EU Foreign Policy Chief Baroness Ashton, Lieberman did not elaborate on the possible consequences. In the past, he has called for Israel to sever all relations with the administration of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas should it press on with its UN bid. And some hardline Israeli ministers are even calling for Israel to annex chunks of the West Bank if the Palestinians go ahead. Just so you know, Israeli officials insist they have not yet finalized their response to the UN. Now, who wouldn't want to study harder after hearing this story? Authorities in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu have begun handing out the first of an estimated 6.8 million free laptops to school children. How about that? Now, all students in government-funded secondary schools and colleges will be eligible for a $292 laptop as part of a $2 billion 5-year program, the first of its kind in India. And the laptops are part of a huge giveaway promised by ministers during elections earlier this year. And supporters of the scheme say it will help disadvantaged children whose parents cannot afford a computer. And just so you know, Tamil Nadu has a history of politicians giving away freebies to people. The previous chief minister dished out thousands of color televisions during his rule. How cool is that? I wonder what our politicians have been promising us. Not televisions and laptops, I'm sure. Laptop would be too educational of a thing for them. Okay, now according to a report by UNICEF, British parents are trapping their children in a cycle of compulsive consumerism by showering them with toys and designer labels instead of spending quality time with them. I don't know how you feel about that and whether it is actually happening. But materialism has come to dominate family life in Britain as parents pointlessly amass goods for their children to compensate for their long working hours. And UNICEF said the obsession was one of the underlying causes of the riots and widespread looting which gripped the UK last month as teenagers targeted shops for designer clothes and goods.